There seems to be some information going around claiming that the star that led the astrologers in Matthew chapter 2 was the product of God and not Satan. This argument was obviously designed to refute the biblical teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses. This video will bring out the main points of the arguments and examine them to demonstrate the short-sighted reasoning. The argument goes like this in Matthew chapter 2 verse 1 to 2, and it reads, "After Jesus had been born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, look, astrologers from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, 'Where is the one born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when we were in the east, and we have come to do obeisance to him.'" After reading Matthew chapter 2, they asked the question, where did the wise men see the star? Well, of course, the obvious reply would be clearly just as Matthew chapter 2 reads, "For we saw his star when we were in the east." Then they reason and ask, does it say anything about the star leading them to Jerusalem? No, it does not say that they were led by the star. It just says that they saw the star while they were in the east. Then they continue to reason, but is there a scripture that does say they were led by the star instead of seeing the star? Then they point to verse 9 in Matthew chapter 2. After they had heard the king, they went their way, and look, the star they had seen when they were in the east went ahead of them until it came to a stop above where the young child was. So clearly they're making a difference between seeing the star and the star going ahead of them. I remember a time when my mother bought me a remote-controlled blimp. We filled it with helium and off it went. Now the winds were very strong and the blimp was pushed down to the sidewalk and the batteries popped out. The strong wind blew my toy blimp to the next city. And here is the point. I saw where the blimp was going, the east side of my hometown. Now when I saw my brand new remote-controlled toy blimp leaving toward the east side of my hometown, which is mainly going to the next city, I so desperately wanted to chase it, but I couldn't. I was far too young to run across town chasing my toy blimp. Let me ask the question, did I see the blimp? Yes. If I would have followed the blimp that was leading itself to the east side of my hometown, would that blimp be leading me if I chose to follow it? Yes. So there is no difference. It seems like Jehovah shared or revealed something extraordinary to his witnesses because he loves them and he doesn't want them to be in darkness. He is a loving Father. Now that we exposed the first argument or premise, let's move on to the second. They now focus on verse 12, and it reads, "However, because they were given divine warning in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way." Then they continued to reason. See, Jehovah gave them a warning in a dream, and they were obedient. That separates the astrologers from evil King Herod. Does this really separate the astrologers from evil King Herod in Jehovah's eyes, because they listened to the divine warning given in a dream by Jehovah God? No, and here is why. This reasoning is invalid and unreasonable, considering that we have absolute no clue whatsoever what was contained in that divine warning given to the astrologers in a dream by Jehovah. It could have been a death threat. And why can we come to this conclusion? The astrologers could have been obedient probably for a selfish reason. In other words, they were probably scared to receive the penalty, whatever that may be, of course, if they chose not to listen to Jehovah's warning. Why is this crucial? Because if you and I take a look at the scriptures when Jehovah gives a divine warning in a dream to pagans in other passages of scripture, we can extrapolate and come to a safe, reasonable, and scriptural conclusion. Here is one example. In Genesis chapter 20 verse 3 it reads, "Afterward God came by night to Abimelech in a dream and said to him, 'Here you are as good as dead because of the woman whom you have taken, since she is married and she belongs to another man.'" Also, we should notice that not just pagans can obey God, but even demons. Here is one example in Matthew 17, and it reads, "Then Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was cured from that hour. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why could we not expel it?" And here is the last example. In Luke chapter 4, verse 33, it reads, "Now in the synagogue there was a man with a spirit, an unclean demon, and he shouted with a loud voice, 'Ah, what have we to do with you, Jesus the Nazarene? Did you come to destroy us? I know exactly who you are, the Holy One of God.' But Jesus rebuked it, saying, 'Be silent, and come out of him.' So after throwing the man down in their midst, the demon came out of him without hurting him." Does this make the demons good? Because they were obedient? Well, no, it doesn't. They next reason and say that the astrologers knew something about the Jews' faith or the Jews' religion. They go on to say we know this because scriptures make a clear connection between the star and the birth of the King of the Jews. So let's read this. And it says, "Where is the one born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when we were in the east, and we have come to do obeisance to him." They supposedly make a connection. However, the Bible does not teach, demonstrate in any such way that there is a supposed connection between the star and the birth of the King of the Jews. However, the scriptures do tell us in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 through 6, that these astrologers had some knowledge of the scripture. Verse 9, the astrologers quote a scripture, even a prophecy. So we now know that these astrologers have some knowledge of scripture, not because of some biased, made-up connection of the star and the birth of the King of the Jews, but we know this because the astrologers quoted a scripture, a prophecy in Matthew chapter 2. How obvious is that? Do you see how twisted this reasoning really is? Let's reason. These astrologers, we cannot say what their heart condition or motive was during their encounter with Herod and the star and then meeting young Jesus. However, Satan knew these men observed the stars for perverted reasons. Satan also knew that these men had some knowledge of the Holy Scriptures, and this would be the perfect puppet. So, from observations, it seems that Satan knew that these stargazers, who apparently had some knowledge of Scripture, would follow this star naturally. Makes sense, right? They had an interest in the Scriptures, and they also had an interest in stars. Put those two together, boom, you got a puppet. Anyways, so it reads in verse 6, the astrologers quoted a scripture, a prophecy. So from this verse we can come to a scriptural conclusion they had some knowledge of the Holy Scriptures. So in conclusion, this is no scriptural connection between the star and the King of the Jews. Let's move on to the next point. They reasoned that Jerusalem was the logical choice. That's why the star supposedly led them to Jerusalem first, because it was the capital. This is invalid and flat out wrong, as we will see. If God really was controlling the star, why would he lead the star to Jerusalem? Doesn't God read hearts? Yes, he does. So if God can know what is inside of a man, then why send the star to King Herod? Wouldn't Jehovah had seen the evil in King Herod and all Jerusalem with him? At hearing this, King Herod was agitated and all Jerusalem with him. Matthew chapter 2, verse 3. And they were agitated because of the Messiah appearing. This information and deliberate propaganda has been put to the test concerning Scripture, and has failed to be true when put to the test.